All right, the big issue, resurgence and momentum.
Yeah, we're seeing a lot of games swing, aren't we? And this is really exciting. You were at the Geelong game. You could feel it shift, couldn't you? You could feel a shift. The Hawthorn Carlton game was terrific to watch yesterday. Carlton brutal early, ran out of legs. Hawks just all over them. It felt like they were going to win by 3 goals, Hawthorn, halfway through the last quarter. And then somehow or some way, Carlton found the energy and the sustenance or the substance to keep going. You know, Wiedering had a couple of big moments. Silvani had a couple of big moments. Paddy Cripps was just there all day. So I think it's not unrealistic to expect a 4-goal shift at some point in the game. And I think this is because of many different things, but I think the rule changes have been significant. I think the stand rule is having a big effect on ball movement. Your ability to not necessarily go inside 50 more regularly or not necessarily score more, but the freedom of ball movement between the arcs is challenging teams, particularly with those assertive defences, with the defenders who want to stand 10 metres in front of their forward, their opponent. They're getting caught out regularly. And it's not the strolling out the back goal anymore. It's a bit different to that. But do you feel that? Do you see that? You can almost sense that there's a shift in most games.
Oh, definitely. And no lead is safe and no cause is lost. That's very real at the moment. Now, whether that'll be a phenomenon of the first 4 weeks, where footy is usually more energetic than where it settles. But if you're not a go-ahead team at the moment, if you're not intent on moving the ball forward, you've missed the 2022 boat.
If you don't trust your players as a coach and give them the keys to the car and say, righto, let's go. You know, let's see what you got. I think you're right. I think that the really exciting part about what Craig McRae and Sam Mitchell have done in particular, and Michael Voss, but in a different way with Michael Voss. They're more centre bounce punish and damage. But certainly the other two, what they've done with challenging the opposition to just defeat them at contest, and we're coming at you. It's like a tidal wave. When Collingwood, I'm a massive fan of Collingwood, and I said last night on First Crack that I think they're playing finals this year, but just because of the way, not just the way they play, but the way they all get involved. It's infectious. Their thirst to play the game. You see the energy they're playing with now. It's unsustainable for that to hold at that level all year. And they'll find other ways to slow the game down. It's really easy to bring in a couple of tactics to take 2 minutes off the clock or a minute here, a minute there, just to gather yourselves. That's easy. He doesn't want to do that, Craig McRae, because they've been there. They're bored with that. They don't want to play that brand. But if he says, hey, listen, we're going to play our way for the first 16 minutes of the quarter, and if we get a 4-goal lead, we're going to bank it. So let's just take that to quarter time. Hey, let's kill 2 minutes off it. The players will love that. But if he says, we want to play slow, boring footy during the first 8 minutes of the quarter, and let's just throw a couple of jabs. Let's not land any haymakers. They don't want to play that way. So that sometimes to have the players wanting more and wanting to play this aggressive brand of footy is half the battle. So I'm a massive believer in what Collingwood are doing. Hawthorn's interesting, isn't it? Oh, you were there yesterday. Yeah. Are they drastically different to Collingwood? I think they are.
Yep. But
their star factor forward of centre, Gunston and Bruce. I don't know how many years they're going to keep doing this for, Gerard. It's actually getting embarrassing for the rest of the 29 pluses in the comp at the moment. But they have just got an unbelievable ability to hit the scoreboard when the game demands it, when it's sliding. So even though they both lost on the weekend, in my eyes they took significant steps forward to be able to play with such power. They're going to be a tough challenge for any team this year.
And what did yesterday tell us about Carlton? Because from being under siege to a point where they might have taken fright and lost the game, I thought they did a hell of a lot right after probably doing a hell of a lot wrong.
Yeah.
I thought their last 8 minutes was excellent.
When you play Carlton, it's like playing against your big brother. They just bash you up. They just bash you. When there's an opportunity to get physical at clearance or even at contest, they are super tough. It's next level. So you bring your A game at clearance or you get embarrassed. You bring your A game when the ball moves from contest to contest or you get embarrassed. And then It's a hard way to win, and I don't know whether you can do it all year. And I think it's going to be a long year for players like Paddy Cripps and Kennedy and Hewitt, who are going to be asked to play with this brutality for 25 weeks. But it's a great starting point if you're Michael Voss coming in saying, we're getting tougher first, and I think next year there'll be layers added to ball movement. The way they defend is really solid, but I think particularly ball movement will be next off-season. So if you're a Carlton fan, get excited about this year, but don't just temper it a fraction. I think 2023, if you can just hold the course this year with your toughness, next year is the real excitement for me. Whereas I think a couple of other teams they've got more strings to their bow. But if you're going to play Carlton, you've got to get the game on the outside as quick as you can, because they're going to batter and bruise most teams.
For all the fun that is being had, there are some who are missing out on it. The Monday men's test for round 3. There are some who are missing out on it. And right at the front of that queue is North Melbourne, who without doubt were the worst bit of the weekend. Here's the coach, David Noble.
It's pretty embarrassing. It's really poor on our standards that we're trying to create. So, there's got to be consequences around training. There's got to be consequences around skill errors. Close to 80 points on turnovers. It's just unacceptable. So, no, I'm not happy. Our club's been beaten by 200 points today. The State League game was exactly the same. So we've got to go back and have a bloody good look at ourselves. That's the bottom line. Coaches, players alike, staff, it's not acceptable.
The strong language was there after the first practice match, which was a huge defeat, and it's there after round 3, which was abominable.
Yeah, personally, I don't want to hear him apologising. I don't. I think that I talk as a North Melbourne fan. Okay, can I do that? Because I think that most North Melbourne people are a little bit frustrated. They're not angry. They're not really upset because they expected this year would be a bottom 4 year. So they're not getting carried away. They're not thinking that that we're going to rise up the table and win 12 games and challenge for the finals. They're not, but they want to be taken on the journey. So you get the number 1 pick. You get excitement. Horne-Francis is coming. What's he going to offer? So the first 3 weeks are trying to just look at Horne-Francis, to be perfectly frank. And then you're looking for the next level of development. And that's all it is. Nothing more, nothing less. So what you work out how that looks. What does the next level of development look like? Well, to me, it's showing some sort of plan. Now, I've talked about this for weeks. I still can't see this plan. Whether it's with the ball or without the ball, I can't see it. But there's no asset at all. What is the one thing you say, well, we're going to bring this? So Carlton bring sheer aggression and physicality and brutality at the clearance and brutality at the contest. And if they get beaten there, well, so be it. Hawthorn, throwing the ball in the middle of the ground, like so aggressive. And if they get beaten playing that way, well, so be it. What are North doing? So I'm not worried. They're all words to me, all these standards. We can't measure standards. All the things that David Noble's throwing up, we can't measure. Can't measure any of them. So that last quarter on the weekend, 9 goals in a quarter of football, 9 goals 5 I think it was, 27 inside 50s. He's talking about 40. He's talking about 80 points from turnover across the game. It was 41 points in a quarter. It was a mauling. And I look at, you're talking about standards, and I'm hard on senior players, okay? Because if they don't lead the way, then what are the young kids going to follow? They're going to learn bad habits, and it's actually going to put you back further than it should. So Hugh Greenwood, for me, is a significant piece. You get this guy as a senior core player, no Ben Cunnington, no Jed Anderson. He's going to go in and replace them. Well, he has to show the work rate post a lost clearance or a won clearance that shows Horne-Francis, okay, now I've got to switch on and I've got to chase or I've got to do whatever. Some of the efforts to defend or to get involved in the game after it left the clearance were embarrassing. And I'll go further. Actually, it's not embarrassing. It's counterproductive to everything you're trying to set up. So I don't want to hear the words, okay? And it's easy to drop a Jared Pollock, right? Not living the standards, not doing this, not doing that. Easy out. It's easy to drop to throw up a name, a Curtis Taylor or one of the younger players, a Tom Powell or one of these guys. But if you look at the root cause of the problem, it's not engaging in the game when the ball's either 50-50 in dispute, or just about to leave the clearance one way or the other? What are you doing? And that's where I'm critical of the senior core players. So does he have the courage, David Noble, to make a statement with one of those guys? Because that's the core of the problem. The problem isn't, Luke McDonald at fullback. It's not. And it's not even about tactics, really. It's about standards and what you're willing to accept, not words. I'm sick of the words. So don't apologise. Dennis Pagan used to say, don't explain and don't complain. Just get on with it. No one cares. So it's not about winning at the moment, but it's about setting up to win in the future. And I don't see where that is. And that's hard for me to say because I love that footy club and I love most of the people that are there. And I think the rebuild in terms of the picks that they're getting, they'll always be okay. But I don't want pick one every year, Gerard.
No.
That's a bad sign.
Yeah.
So I want to see what the next step is, and if they can't do that, they've got to ask why. Why can't they get that right? Is it them? They'd have to turn the attention back to themselves at some stage. I'd be surprised they didn't have a meeting today for an hour and say, "Well, is the problem us? Are we not? Are they learning what we're teaching? And if they're not, there's a disconnect there. Where is it? Who is it? Are you teaching the right way? Because if they're not following, well, we know how that finishes. So the question is, the challenge right now is for David Noble to show Kangaroos fans that this is the right path. Is that a fair statement?
Yeah.
Nothing more, nothing less.
No, and that is the purpose of this season, and it's got off to a really rickety start.
Rickety? Gerard, it's been horrendous. They've apologised twice in 4 weeks.
It was what we spoke about. You don't want your pre-season language to be the way that it was, which flagged the problems coming in. We knew it last week when they struggled to beat the team of Ringans against West Coast. So you couldn't honestly sit there on Saturday night and say that was a surprise. That's the pattern. And now their next stretch doesn't include notionally winnable games, so your point is right. So what are we driving through the next 3 weeks as we try to make incremental improvement to set up for when the wins might be achievable?
So I showed on Fox during the game on the weekend the path to a rebuild, okay? So Melbourne, back in 2014, percentage of, I think it was 64 or something. Next year, 75. Year after that, 90. Then 105. Then you're playing finals. So you go from copping 50-point losses to giving them out 5 years later. Okay, so you have 8 1 year, 6 the next, 5 the next, 2 the next, and then it flips. You start handing them out. Brisbane exactly the same. Despite the fact they won 5 games 2 years in a row, their percentage jumped by about 20. So you get more competitive. That's all we're asking. I'm not asking for them to win 12 games. I'm just asking for their percentage, which was 70 last year, to go to 80 this year. That's not a big request. But if it goes to 60 this year, then I think you've got to explain why. Because, in effect, your talent's got better, but your results have gone the other way. They didn't trade out Goldstein, Cunnington and Zeeble last year. They didn't. So I know that Cunnington's not there, but there are other players that have come in that should be able to elevate you to 80, 85% percentage points at the end of the season.
The 0-3s are a bit different. I know we'll get to Essendon in a moment. Port Adelaide 0-3 is a horror.
Yeah, it is. It is because of the quality of opponent that you're talking about. So, like types, we called it in round one. This is a game they just had to win. 4 goals up, late in the piece. And my point is that they've been beaten by not adapting in the coach's box in the last 5 minutes, by their gun player in Travis Boak missing an opportunity. So there's your ace and your king. And your queen was Ollie Wines, who I showed some vision last night, gave Ben Keys the perfect opportunity to be the match winner when they were 1 point in front. Didn't pick him up, let him charge. Now, I know it's not his strength, right? But if it's not your strength, adjust. Call someone to grab your man. Orchestrate. Don't allow the game to get away from you because of what you already know is your weakness. So I said last night that this is on Ken, this loss. So 7 points up. They've already kicked 2 goals in a row, Adelaide. There's 5 minutes to go. Put your Jack Silvani behind the ball. put your Jack Gunston behind the ball. No one went behind the ball. The shallow, hacked forward kick that come in that Elliot Himmelberg marked was in the absolute corridor, 30 from goal. Do you know where the loose man would notionally stand if he was to be a +1 behind the ball? That would go, if not straight to him, to a position where he would be able to defend it, spoil it, rush it through the behinds, whatever. Whatever he does is another 30 seconds of delay. They only needed what we worked out was about 3 seconds. So I thought that was the time. Okay, concede that goal. Give up that goal. So now you're 1 point in front. I've not only got one person behind the ball, I've probably got two, because this is it. They stayed 1-on-1 behind the ball, and they had to basically take a run back with the flight mark to save the game, which was Trent McKenzie. Fantastic mark. But if he drops that, his opponent, which was Rioli, I think at the time, finishes the game. And you say, well, hang on, we didn't have a loose man. Now, they got beaten at the end by a free kick and by that last random play of the ball just coming forward. But you've got to be better than that. You've got to be the reason in the coach's box when it gets to that situation. And people say, oh, you're too hard. If that situation happens this weekend, I guarantee you they have men behind the ball. Guarantee you. Don't say, oh, you're blaming Ken, it's too hard, you're blaming Ken. If it happens again, we will talk about it. And if he doesn't do it and they lose the game, these are the sorts of things that cost you your job because you're not influencing the outcome. Your job as a coach is to get the best out of the group. The group was 4 goals up, and then you've allowed opportunities to the opposition that they're luxuries you don't give. You just don't give them. So I think Ken Hinkley would accept that there's a fair part of the responsibility falls on his desk. Boat kicks the goal. We're not having this conversation. They win a couple of clearances or win some contested footy in that last 5 minutes. We're not having this conversation. But right now, Port are a team without assets. They've lost their forward half game. They can't defend, and they can't win contest, and they can't win clearance. That's a bad recipe. That's taking you nowhere. So they're not only 0-3, they're 0-3 without a reason to be any good. They really are. And that's the honest truth. People can argue it, and you can talk about last year all you like. Last year's gone. So right now, they're asset poor, and they've got nothing to show for the start of the season.
And their only way back is Thursday night against Melbourne, because the historical marker of 0-3, but 0-4 could become a death spiral there.
They have board meetings after 4 weeks, Jared. It's a bad time to walk into a board meeting.
And then the curiosity is Leon Cameron and what he said about his contract. So this is the approach of the Giants and their long-term coach to him being the last year of his current contract.
I don't want us to have any regrets. If I'm the right person, and I'm loving my coaching at the moment and can't wait for next week to play Fremantle. But I think it's just a really good decision from the club to wait till the end of the year and then make a good decision after that.
So they'll go the distance. He'll sit the exam and then he'll get marked. An A or a B, nice, neatly sitting in the finals. Here's a new contract. If we're going backwards, thanks for your time. We're done. This will be one of the easiest coaching positions to read that we've ever come across.
So this is the age-old argument of when do you re-sign your coach, or how do you exit one in a classy, humble fashion. When you don't re-sign the man at the start of the year, despite him wanting to be re-signed, this is what you create. You create an environment that has to have not just winning, significant winning. They need to live in the top 4. They need to live in the top 4 for Leon to be able to have that conversation at the end of the year. If they don't, how can he come in and say, well, at the end of the home and away season, we've been 4th, 7th, 6th, 10th, 7th, and right now they sit 13th. How can you mount a conversation? They say, we want to win a flag with this group. Show us the map. Show us the map to the flag. It's a hard conversation to win. It's a hard conversation to have. So I think we all know where this is trending.
Well, so what's the marker?
Well, the marker has to be top 4. He has to finish top 4 at the end of the home and away. I mean, the last 3 years, 7, 10, 6. It's not going to get it done, is it? So say they finish sixth this year. Can you walk in and say, hey, listen, I want a 4-year deal? I think we know, don't we? Do you agree with that, or is that too slanted?
I think winning a final would get you a seat at the table for the discussion.
You reckon? So you think they'd sign him
I think
for...
you would have the full discussion if he wins a final.
Gee,
I think if you're not winning a final, I don't think they even sit down at the table. They shake hands and say, thanks. If you win a final, we're in full-blown discussion. If you make the top 4, here's the new contract.
Makes top 4, sign away.
Yep.
Done. Doesn't make top 4, got to win 2 finals. Can't be winning 1. You can't be a team 5 to 8. You just can't. They can't be. And that's harsh. But he's been there 10 years, and maybe they're thinking, well, if he can't do it with this group, it's time for a change. And when you look at the heat that Voss, Mitchell, and McRae have put on stagnant environments, then this is what happens. No, we're not going to just re-sign you because we're seeing what the rest of the competition's doing.
Does it make it a hard year? Say the Giants live their season around 50-50. 8 and 9, 12 and 13. What's the risk in that? Is everybody will know at a certain point, we're not getting there. There's change coming at the end of the year.
But you can't argue you're coaching well at 50-50.
It's not him.
Yeah.
That's your environment. What is that will have a material impact on the environment. So that's the risk you run as board and management. Yeah. Okay, so we are going to put this on trial right throughout the year, and we need to do so.
Yeah.
But what's the risk that becomes self-fulfilling or self-perpetuating or self-sabotaging within the program?
It's very hard to have a hard conversation with players when they're not sure you're the man. Why would I listen to this guy? He's not going to be here in 8 weeks. He's telling me this, and this. No. It doesn't work. And this is the old argument we always have. You know, if you think you're on the premiership path, re-sign them as early as you can because the growth and the belief in the group becoming one and charging forward is huge. Because the opposite, if the board tells the coach, we don't know whether you're the man, we're going to wait the end of the year because we don't even know whether you're the man. No idea. Because you finished 6th, 10th, 6th, 10th, 7th the last 3 years. We're holding. So the players have that same reservation. It's mirrored. So that's why it's a really awkward situation, and it's always a tough way to exit, Gerard. If that's what they're thinking, well, clearly they got that in the back of their mind.
Oh, well, they've given themselves that. The exit strategy is crafted.
Yeah.
If we're not winning the flag, we're out.
But
we're
I think
out of this coach.
If McRae and Voss and Mitchell had come in and were right now 0-3, then I think he'd have more chance of survival. But the fact that they've come in and rejuvenated these 3 football clubs makes it even harder.
The showdown on the Friday night should have been trusted. It should have been trusted. Jordan Dawson's kick looked all wrong off the boot and all right on the swing in. The scenes in the stands, just wow.
It just shows you. So this guy had a choice between the 2 clubs, Gerard.
Which was such a great backdrop
The
to
irony
it all.
is unbelievable,
It was
isn't
a
it?
source of significant angst in October and November.
Yeah, and he's the reason that the game swings on his boot. Unbelievable. What they got right. Can we go back to the Dogs? Because I think we've analysed the Dogs within an inch of their lives the last couple of weeks, and Luke Beveridge has had a tough fortnight. For them to get that win, just to put the pressure to the side for a moment, I think Luke Beveridge challenged Marcus Bontempelli to play, given the fact he's 70% fitness and played really well. Aaron Norton, the same, 70%. We just need you out there, mate. We just need you out there. I'll get Jamara to play, and we'll see if we can do something with, our forward line structure, and we'll see if we can carry the ball a bit more, and we'll see if we can get back to our contested possession handball game. But the pillar to the absolute foundation to how we're going to beat the Swans is without the footy. So that sell. How does he get that sell? How does he find a way to prod this group that were probably a little bit, I don't know, they were a little bit broken. He's done it. So I think you can say what you like about Luke Beveridge, and a lot of people don't want to like Luke Beveridge. I like the way he coaches. I enjoy the way he motivates. I enjoy his storytelling capabilities, and I find it really refreshing. It's not about X's and O's. It's about the attachment to a purpose, whether it's weekly or across the course of the season. So huge win for the Dogs. Back on track. Let's see if they can go next level. Lockie Hunter, been the whip boy for the first month of footy. Fantastic outing. Libba back to a bit of his best. So there's a lot to like about what the Dogs were able to do on the weekend.
Two for the debate. One is Richmond and one is Essendon. How bad is Essendon's 0-3? So my view with Essendon is don't invent a crisis. They've lost 3 games that I think most people looking at their fixture would go, okay, they're going to be behind Geelong, Brisbane and Melbourne. It would have been better if they played terribly in round 1, so they get hung a lot on that. But their 0-3 is foreseeable. So is the retrieval of 0-3, not least because their next 2 games are at Marvel against Adelaide and Fremantle. So unless they fall into the doom, their 0-3 is quickly recoverable, I think.
Yeah, I think you're right. It's bad to be thinking like this, isn't it? It's like backing bad racehorses, Gerard.
Yeah, that's right.
You
It'll
put your
win
money
next
and you
time.
go, why did I back
Oh,
that
it'll
horse?
win this time.
Yeah.
No, it didn't
Finish
win.
fast.
Right.
Come from 18th to 5th. I
Yeah.
should back that again. Look, Daniel Hoyne at Champion Data and I have taken a bit of a risk last year, and we did it without the footy. We judged without the footy. 5 or 6 different components, all married together, gives you a ranking, and that held really strong last year. And it taught us about Melbourne and how dominant they were without the ball. So we've gone another step this year. We've done the core 4. So we've done the same thing with the ball. So we've got with and without. We've done at clearance, your ability to turn that into a positive or minimise the negative. So that's on score differential. And post-clearance contest, which is the game, which is coaching strategy, really. How do you outnumber at certain areas, all those sorts of things. There's a lot of tactical stuff goes into that. But bottom line is you get a ranking at whether you can or can't win post-clearance contest. So if you look at Essendon right now, and this will change the footy language through the court, you'll hear people talk about with the footy and without the footy. I wouldn't mind them saying core 4. I'm going to call them out, Gerard. So with the footy, the Bombers have always been pretty good, haven't they? They've always been exciting with the footy. But the one thing that doesn't allow them to compete with the best teams is without the footy, they allow too many luxuries. Now, at some stage, they're going to give a lesser ranked opponent the opportunity to play. The good teams don't let you play. They disarm you. We just talked about Luke Beveridge. Disarm the Swans. The Swans want to go through the corridor. Wouldn't let them go through the corridor. You're going to beat us a different way. Bill Belichick, we're going to make you play us left-handed. That's what the good teams do. They make you play left-handed. Essendon right now are ranked 18th without the footy. Now they've played 3 good opponents. No problem.
And in round 1, they were so bad that I suspect there's a legacy to those numbers.
Possibly. But it is a 3-week block. So I think 4 weeks you get your absolute sample size. So they get an opportunity to show us this week against the Adelaide Crows, who are a reasonable ball movement team, but not hardly world beaters. They get an opportunity to show us that those numbers aren't the reality. But if they are the reality, then the walls come crashing down. So not only do they have to play well, I want to judge them on what they take off the Adelaide Crows.
Yep.
So is that a fair statement?
Yeah. So nothing. They have to beat Adelaide.
Yep.
They have to beat Fremantle. And then you get your test on Anzac Day. Notionally, we would have felt like Essendon were going to be ahead of Collingwood. Collingwood has played the better footy through the first 3 weeks. So get to 2 and 3 and then submit yourself for the test.
Yeah, love it.
If you fail to get to 2 and 3, then forget about it. Don't even worry about turning up. But 0-3 is not a crisis for them unless they fall into it. And I felt like by the end of Friday night, I didn't feel it I didn't like their first half. But they put pieces of their game together in the second half of that game, and they just ultimately weren't good enough to beat Melbourne.
Yeah.
So that's okay. Now bring that game to your next 2 and pick off the Crows and the Dockers.
But this is my point. Do they bring pieces with the footy, or do they bring pieces without the
So
footy?
let's see that.
Yeah, okay. Well, let's hold on them.
Yeah. So I'm holding on them at 0-3.
At 1-3, we're still holding.
At 2-3, I'm holding.
2-3, you're still holding.
And then come to the test. But if you lose either of the next 2, that's it. Yeah. Now, after round one,
I just got a little look into the Whateley household there.
with Richmond, I just wanted to know where the exits were. Could you just show me where the exits are after round one?
That's right.
And then they won in round two. I've unclipped my seatbelt after round three. I'm ready to make a dash for it if we see a little bit more of that.
You sometimes talk like you're in economy, Gerard. I know you haven't seen economy for a long time. Richmond, hey?
When it turned nastily, didn't it?
Yeah, it did. And again...
It's too many of the telltales of last year that are really obvious, I think.
So can I stick with my core four?
Yeah.
They're 17th without the footy. 17th. We've never said that about Richmond. Richmond have been the most difficult team to play against for a decade. Once you're easy to play against, it's over. It's over. Because it's not really about the elite talent coming back, really. Like, does Dustin Martin help you without the footy? He might win you a game or two, but he doesn't really help you without the footy. Does Kane Lambert? Maybe. Throw other names up. Dylan Grimes does. So if Grimes is out there and healthy, yeah, he does. But if you're not winning the ball back and you're able to move the ball coast to coast against the Tigers, then it is over. And it's always hard when it finishes like this and it happens quick. They played some pretty exciting footy. And I think you can hear it. If you listen to Damien's press conference again and just sort of think, what's he really saying? Yeah, we played some good footy, but they got us. So, no, I think you're right. They're still going to beat some teams this year.
Yeah,
they're still going to they'll shape the finals, but they won't be part of them.
Do you think Jack Ginnivan it's fine to be an individual until it affects the team? Do you think that conversation happens this week or not?
Well, my thoughts and my experiences are as soon as you start to stifle the kids, you lose them.
Yep.
Let them grow, let them evolve. He's still trying to work out who he is as a player. Does he want to be the Hayden Ballantyne type forward pocket? Because you know what? That's a pretty good player. If that's you, that's a pretty good outcome. And if it's not you, he'll work that out. But he can play the game. I'll tell you, I think he's been caught up in something that's, I'll have this conversation with Kane on Friday, but I think Kane needs to pull back on Jack. This is not between Jack and Kane. It's between the Collingwood fans and Kane. Don't use Jack as the pawn. Don't, because it's a bit unfair.
Sam Edmonds here for Coach Nick. Contact Coach Nick and you may just change your business forever. We had a long conversation on Crunch Time on Saturday. If you weren't with us, it's there on the podcast around the Cyril Rioli scenario in light of Caroline Wilson's story in The Age. Sam, good morning.
Morning, Gerard. Morning, David.
Samuel.
Good to be with you both. Just on all things Hawthorn, Gerard, it's getting really gritty at the Hawks. Now, the team is playing some real Showtime footy. They look great with ball in hand at the weekend. They're in the trenches when it comes to Jeff Kennett's hold on the presidency and who might replace him. So United on the field, far from United off it. And it's heightened by, as you say, the Cyril Rioli allegations and those of his wife, Shannon, in The Age over the weekend. Now, as we all know, Hawks for Change is the group that is desperate to have Kennett removed, and the Rioli revelations has been the trigger for them to go hard and go hard again, demanding that Kennett resign immediately rather than that June 30 deadline to find his replacement. Now, at the same time, this group's ace in the deck was Ian Silk, elected to the board pre-Christmas, and despite never really saying so, it was assumed that the superannuation doyen would put his hand up for the presidency. But as things stand, Gerard and Kingy, Ian Silk doesn't want to be president. He's not ego-driven or a wildly ambitious person, and he certainly doesn't want to be seen as the sheriff riding into a troubled town to bring peace. That's not his go. He's been on the board for 5 minutes. Now, his desire for the presidency might come, but right now, it's not for him. So the nominations committee formed to select Kennett's replacement met for the first time on Friday. It was publicised on the club's website, so that's a sign that the process is being taken really seriously. But the makeup of it is interesting. Now, it's chaired by Kennett's right-hand man, Peter Nankerville, who was appointed late in place of Andy Gowers as chair, despite the agreement struck between Kennett and Gowers that the former player wouldn't run for the board as long as he chaired this committee. Kennett's key ally, Anne-Marie Paliza, is also on it. Then there's the money man, Jeff Harris, who's poured $10 million in the Dingley development. Board member Katie Hudson is there, Gowers, and the wild card that is Don Scott. Now, having spoken to people involved in this process, there is absolutely a scenario whereby Jeff Kennett remains as president past this June 30 deadline and going forward. That is the fear for those who want him out and the admission from those making the decision. Now, how this would be received, not just by the influential Hawks for Change group that has 11 premiership players and names like Ayres, Schwab, Morrissey, but by the majority of the Hawthorn membership who want change, it would be telling and potentially trigger some real board carnage. So with Hudson being on the nominations committee, the lone internal candidate at the moment is the very ambitious Owen Wilson. But we are a fair way from that in the sense that the nominations committee's only met once. There is time. Silk could put his hand up and a suitable contender could emerge. But both sides tell me Jeff could remain as president. So that's how things stay at the moment. One of the many criticisms, I think, of Kennett at the moment, paying Clarkson $1 million to watch, the messy succession plan, the Rioli allegations, the lack of Pokey's exit planning, is the fact that as a president who prides himself and bases his professional life on good governance, there is no suitable successor ready to assume the top job. So there's no succession plan there. There's some who remember the Richard Garvey debacle as well. So Kennett has changed the Hawthorn constitution so that no president, of course, could serve more than 2 3-year terms, but he says he was called back. So that's how things stand at the moment. Concern on both sides for different reasons. So the great juxtaposition, isn't it? Playing some really attractive football on the field and off it, they're anything but that at the moment.
Yeah, so the issue sort of around Hawthorn's soul is they won't be complete until they reconcile with Cyril Rioli. That the heartbreaking element, it's not the final straw of Jeff Kennett's words, is that, so having watched Adam Goodes be hounded out of the game, it turns out that a player who provided us such joy lived these experiences as an Indigenous man throughout the way with his club, is that should cause us all pause for even more thought that's long overdue.
Troubling, wasn't it, reading some of those historical allegations? If we knew of the Launceston Airport quote-unquote incident, we didn't know of the historical stuff that he and his wife Shannon articulated over the weekend. So that is troubling, and we'll see what happens from here, Gerard.
Can you give me your seedings?
Yes, at number 1, Melbourne, and they're not moving Melbourne for a long time. Number 2, Brisbane.
Yeah, so I think 1 and 2 are easy.
Yep, and back them now for your grand final, Quinella.
Okay, and then it's choose your own adventure, I reckon, 3 and 4.
It is, and I'm going Geelong at 3. I didn't like what I saw from Sydney. I'm going to go Western Bulldogs 4.
Yeah.
I'm back to Geelong and Dogs, which is disappointing. I'm disappointed in myself, but that's where I'm at.
I'm clearly Melbourne 1, Brisbane 2.
What do you got?
I'm going to go Bulldogs 3.
3?
And Carlton 4.
Carlton?
Yeah.
No cats?
Yeah. They can just sit to see if they beat Brisbane. They can come into the Seedings next week if they beat Brisbane on Friday night.
Ooh, I think you...
And the Dogs beat Sydney, so they knock them out.
Okay.
A bit of head-to-head action I've got going there.
All right, I like that. It takes us forward. I like how you trend to the Friday night games.
Yeah.
Do you work Friday nights?
I do.
Oh, funny.
Good means test, Kiki. Thank you.
Johnny J.